Hello everyone, my name is Lasmir, and today I'll be showing you 30 ways you can spice up the custom trees in your Minecraft world. In general, I'm going to go from the least unique and interesting ways to do that to the most, although there will be some exceptions. And here we are in my creative testing world, and just look at all of these trees and all of the exciting ideas to come. But for now, let's start with a semi-interesting note on the Strangler tree. This tree is actually based off of an existing tree that lives in, of course, Florida, and it basically grows around and strangles another living tree, eventually killing it. I just thought it would look so cool to have a regular tree and then another tree's branches through the form of these stripped birch going all the way around it, wrapping around it, and even putting its leaves. So you see the oak leaves that are normal, and then you have the mangrove leaves that are the leaves of the strangler tree. And then the next example, we can see that it has completely killed the host, and it is now just on its own. Now, you don't have to use this as is. You could just see this as inspiration for a tree that doesn't have a definitive trunk structure, which I think is really cool. You just have these kind of weaving branches going all around. On a more simpler note, you could also just simply mix up the leaves. And just knowing your options, that you can mix and match whatever leaf types you want and have as many different leaf types in the same tree as you want, is very useful. In the next example, I also played around with the leaves. This time I used regular azalea and flowering azalea, although these two are very similar and naturally go together. I also added in these enlarged flowers using some yellow terracotta and the cherry blossom trees to act as the petals of the flowers. Moving on, you can make the leaves very droopy, kind of like you'll see in like swamp trees or mangrove trees or like a willow tree from real life. But all you need to do is just make your regular tree and then extend the leaves downwards to give this droopy effect. The next idea is to get rid of the leaves entirely. You can make a tree that doesn't have any leaves, if it's like winter or if it's a dying tree or something like that. I used mangrove, so I can use these mangrove roots as these stray branches just to give it a little bit extra detail that it needs from not having leaves. Now onto playing with branches instead of the leaves. In this example, all I did was curl the branches around. I just played it around with the branch shape, and I kind of just curled it around. Now, changing the shape of the branches only works if you can actually see the branches, which is why I started the leaves a bit higher up on this design. The next idea is to have a shorter and wider trunk that splits off into thicker branches very early on. Now, the natural next step from that would be, of course, to get rid of the trunk entirely. This one just starts straight from the ground with the branches going up. Is this a tree or just a really big bush? I don't know. And if you want to get really interesting with it, you can actually have two trunks instead of one. I chose for this oak tree right here, I have one on the ground and I have one growing out of a rock. And then they just merge in the middle, going up and then having the regular canopy. And with that, we're already a third of the way done. This tree has a few interesting things about it. The first is that it is growing out of a rock. That is the main thing. But in my opinion, the more interesting thing about this tree is that it uses the regular leaves and it uses the warty mushroom leaves from the nether, which are very hard to use together. I did it by having, first off, by having the warped hyphae as the trunk and the branches, and then I would have it just kind of drooping over and hanging down, and then I would add the leaves all around it. Next is a little bit simpler. We're just playing with the shape of the trunk. Instead of having instead of having a straight trunk, you can twist the trunk around. I like doing this with cherry trees, as I showed right here. But all you do is you take the trunk and you twist it around. And you don't just have to do this on larger trees as well. I could show you right now that what I usually do for smaller cherry trees with the trunk is I'll do something like this, where I go up, and I go back and forth around. So you can have a twisting trunk with a smaller tree as well. Oops. The next idea is to just play around with the trunk and the branches composition, and this is just as simple as just strip the wood. You wouldn't think to do that normally, but it's a pretty simple idea, and it allows for a lot more vibrant trees and more alien looking trees, even though all you've done is taken the bark off. This next one is a very hard idea to pull off, and that is to mix together several different wood types in your tree. In this one, I tried to compartmentalize it a little bit. I had it kind of like streaking across and mixing together here. But in the branches, I have the main branches made of birch, and I have these little hook pieces made out of the crimson wood. You'll find that it's very hard to mix together different wood types purely in like a way that looks natural. But if you lean into the unnaturalness of it, then you can end up with some very interesting and alien-looking design. This next one is only really applicable for larger trees. As you can see, it looks kind of awkward with a regular-ish sized tree on top of it. But the idea is that you can just hollow out the inside of the trunk. In this case, I just made a little tiny cave in here underneath in between the roots. But on a bigger tree, this could be a very, very fancy idea. You could have like your base in there or something. Next up, we have trees with fruit on them. This is an example using a full block for the fruit. And I just decided to make a thicker trunk and then cluster the fruit around it, hanging it up by these fence posts. There are obviously a million ways that you can attach the fruits to the tree. One example that I didn't even show is that you could just put the fruits in the actual tree. A more unique take on the fruit in the tree is this one with a huge fruit that the tree is straining to hold up. I just built the trunk in a big arc going up and then built the branches off of that arc. I like this design because it shows the tree as being a very dynamic structure instead of just being a still object. Our next idea has to do with the roots of the tree, and this is the uprooted tree, where we basically just move the tree up a few blocks so that all the roots are exposed and above the ground for you to look at from the ground level. This makes it super interesting to walk around and under, and it just looks really cool in my opinion. My next idea is, I guess, a little bit similar, but it has to do with the branches. And this is basically where you have the regular trunk and it splits off into branches, but instead of just stopping there, the branches remerge into a second trunk, which then has a normal canopy. This one's a little bit small for the size of the tree. This next tree is the logical procession of the previous two, in that it is both of those traits put together. I made this one just to show that you can mix and match any of these ideas that you want, and that's how you make the truly most unique trees. I'm actually pretty sure this is the tallest tree out of the whole list, just by like a block or two. A way you can give the woods of your world a lot of personality is with a carnivorous tree. In this example, I just slapped a mouth-looking structure at the very bottom with a fruit to lure you in, and some nice eyes. But there are many ways that you can incorporate faces and ways that the trees can interact with the player, that imply how it can interact with the player, even though it's just a bunch of blocks. This next one is called the floating tree, and you might be thinking, but Lasmira, there's already like floating trees. There's already mangrove trees that are literally in the vanilla game. But what this is it's an idea for having a tree that doesn't even touch the ground. In this case, I made the roots of the tree spread out very far over the surface of the water and no deeper, as if they are keeping the tree afloat. And then I created a small in comparison tree with roots that do not touch the bottom again, in comparison to the raft that is keeping it up. This next one does the same thing, but with lava and with the nether trees. In this case, I made it float not using its roots as a raft, but using these bulbs to create a kind of dual trunk up to the regular tree. These next few aren't trees like the other ones are, but I think they serve the same purpose within an environment, and this one is just a large-scale version of bamboo. All I did was take the bamboo blocks. Is this bamboo blocks? Block of bamboo. I took the blocks of bamboo and put some leaves on them to create a larger scale bamboo. If you don't think that this looks particularly accurate, that's fine. It honestly doesn't look the best, but I think it can pass, especially if it's like from a distance or something. This next one is a small tree that plays with the shape of the leaves. This one's, I call it the bubble tree. It's a very small tree, and it's a very neat and trim tree as well. It just has these fences and these kind of leafy balls going up the top. This one isn't as much of a tree as it is just general flora. If you want to see other alien or interesting flora like this, definitely check out Rendog, because right now he is making a landscape that uses a lot of very unique trees that are a lot more clever than the ones that I have in this video. This next one I call the chorus flower because I based it off of the chorus fruit, except I made it look more like a flower. This one, again, not really a tree, but all I did was use the quartz and the mushroom blocks to create a base, and then I used the cherry wood because it looks the most similar to the color of the stems of the chorus fruit plant. And then I just made these flowers out of quartz. I could totally see these being used in an end-themed build or an end-themed landscape. And with that, we're on to the last four. This one is very unique, but I don't know if it looks the best. I was just experimenting here. This is called the array tree, and I call it that because all of the parts of it, except for the leaves, both the trunk and the branches, are arranged very geometrically. There's a big pattern involved. I have these I have a thick diagonal using these 3-block segments going all the way up, and I have all of the branches that are these 2-block wide pieces going up at the exact same angle every time. I made this one just to show you that not every single tree needs to be 100% organic looking. You can have something that isn't as organically made that functions the same purpose as a tree. Now this last one is one of my favorites. It is one of the most extravagant things I have ever made in this game, and that is the twinned tree. And obviously if you're going to be putting two trees together, what better pair to do it than the warped and the crimson and the warped trees. All I did was I made them wrap around each other, and I totally didn't just use World Edit for the whole thing. Second to last, we have this, which I call the candelabra tree. This is a very unique idea, although I wouldn't say it's the best looking, but it is very unique, and it has some potential, I think. Basically, I just made a big wooden structure, and I put 4 pine trees on top of it. And for our very last tree, it isn't the most unique thing I have ever made, but I think that it shows how something doesn't need a specific gimmick in order to look interesting and good. The main thing that I was thinking of when I made this tree was I wanted a spiraling trunk. Not a twisted trunk like this one, but a real spiral. And I think I accomplished that quite well. It goes all the way around, and it makes several loops while it goes up. And I also challenged myself a lot with this tree because I hadn't made a lot of coniferous trees at the time. So doing these kinds of leaf patterns was very new to me. If you ask me, it almost kind of looks like it's not even a tree, like it's a fern or something that's just been scaled up to the size of a tree. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching. I hope this video gave you some inspiration, and remember, all of these ideas are meant to be mixed and matched with each other and explored in new ways that I didn't cover in this video. So tell me in the comments section which one of these was your favorite, and also if you have any recommendations on how I can make these trees look better, because I am kind of partial to how most of these trees' leaves look. Anyway, I'll see you next time.